Ma'am, you need to leave immediately. This bank doesn't serve your kind of clientele. That's how it started. Just like that. No warm welcome. No polite greeting. Just those cold words delivered with authority and a hand slowly reaching for a security radio. Amara Washington didn't flinch. She stood there motionless, a designer briefcase in hand, calm and composed. It was exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, and she was standing in the middle of the flagship branch of Heritage Community Bank right in the heart of downtown Chicago. The place was spotless. Marble floors that gleamed under massive crystal chandeliers, polished brass handrails, expensive wood paneling, the kind of place where money walked around in cufflinks. Amara walked in wearing a tailored charcoal suit, heels clicking sharply with each step exuding confidence. Not the kind you wear like a mask, but the kind that lives in your bones. She walked straight to the premium banking counter. That's where she met Jessica, a young teller, maybe 25. Her glance barely masked the irritation on her face. You could see it behind the forced smile. "Excuse me, Jessica," said her tone clipped. "Regular customer service is over there." She pointed toward the basic teller windows, not even bothering to ask what Amara needed. "I need executive banking services," Amara said softly, but clearly. Jessica blinked, surprised. Her eyebrows shot up like the idea was absurd. "Do you have an appointment?" Now let's pause for a second, because stories like this happen more often than we like to admit. Black stories like Amara's are the reason we keep telling stories of injustice, because they still happen in boardrooms, banks, and high-end lobbies. Have you ever walked into a place you owned literally, owned only to be treated like you didn't belong there? That was Amara's reality, right there in that gleaming lobby. Before Jessica could say anything else, a man stepped out from a side office. Assistant Manager Bradley Mitchell, mid-30s, clean-shaven, confident in the way some people are when no one ever questions their authority. He walked over and sized Amara up with a glance. Just a glance. That was all he needed to make his judgment. "Is there a problem here?" Bradley asked, loud enough that a few heads in the lobby turned his way. "No problem," Amara replied coolly. "I'm requesting access to executive banking services." Bradley crossed his arms. His voice got louder. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This is our premium services area," he said. "Do you have an appointment?" At that moment, a woman named Sarah Chen was sitting at a table nearby sipping an iced latte and casually streaming her day on Instagram Live. Her phone showed 47 viewers, then 63, then 91. Because when Bradley started raising his voice, people started tuning in. "I don't need an appointment," Amara replied. Bradley scoffed. "Ma'am, we have protocols. Premium banking requires significant account minimums. Are you familiar with our requirements?" Amara gently placed her briefcase on the counter. The soft click of leather echoed in the silence. "Perhaps you could explain them to me." The briefcase had a monogram AW, but Bradley wasn't paying attention to the details. He was focused on asserting control. "Executive banking starts at $250,000 in assets," Bradley continued. "We also require extensive documentation of income sources." Then he paused. "Legitimate income sources." Sarah's viewer count hit 347. The comments exploded. "Is this really happening? Somebody record this. 2024. Not 1954. People." Amara glanced at her phone. Several missed calls. General Counsel. Chief of Staff. Board Secretary. Time 2:52 p.m. "Board meeting starts in exactly 43 minutes. "Mr. Mitchell," she said calmly. Bradley squinted. "What board meeting?" "Never mind," she said. "About those protocols." Bradley straightened up like a soldier. "We need to verify identity income and legitimate business purposes. Some people try to use our services for questionable activities." That's when Patricia Kane entered. Regional manager. Sharp-eyed, she'd obviously been briefed. She looked at Amara like she already had an answer ready. What seems to be the issue? She asked, voice neutral but icy. This woman is requesting executive services without proper documentation, Bradley said. I'm trying to explain our requirements. Patricia nodded, clearly approving. We have to be careful. Regulators are strict. Know your customer laws. Suspicious activity. Amara calmly pulled out her wallet. As she reached in, a flash of platinum caught the light. For a brief second, the unmistakable shimmer of an American Express Centurion card. A card so exclusive you can't apply for it. You get invited. Then she slid her driver's license across the marble. Here's my identification, she said. Patricia barely looked at it. We'll also need proof of funds, employment verification, and a detailed explanation of your business with Heritage Bank. There was a parking validation ticket peeking out from Amara's briefcase. It said, VIP Executive Garage, Level P1. That level was reserved for board members and C-suite executives. Nobody else had access. Sarah's live stream was now at 891 viewers. This is discrimination. Plain and simple. What bank is this? Called the news. I understand you have procedures, Amara said, but I'm just trying to access services at my own bank. Your bank. Bradley laughed. Ma'am, this is Heritage Community Bank. We've been serving Chicago's business community for 75 years. Yes, Amara replied, voice level. I'm well aware of the history. Patricia stepped closer. Look, she said, we're trying to be accommodating. But you're being evasive. If you can't provide proper documentation, we'll have to ask you to leave. That's when the monitor behind the counter lit up. A face appeared. District Manager Robert Hayes patched in via video call from the regional office. What's the situation? He asked, serious. Patricia didn't hesitate. Individual requesting executive services without credentials. She's being uncooperative. Hayes nodded. Security protocols are clear. If someone can't verify their legitimate business need, they need to be removed. 2 security guards quietly positioned themselves near the exits. An older woman, sitting nearby, Mrs. Roosevelt, had been watching the whole thing. She stood slowly, her voice cutting through the rising tension. Young man, she said to Bradley, maybe you should check your records before making assumptions. But Bradley didn't listen. His eyes were locked on Amara. You have 5 minutes to provide documentation, he said firmly. Or we'll have to ask you to leave. Amara's phone buzzed. One new text. She glanced at it, then typed something quickly. Code 7. Initiate immediately. Then she looked up. 5 minutes, she repeated thoughtfully. That should be sufficient. Sarah's viewer count crossed 1,200. Hashtag had Heritage Bank started trending locally. The marble lobby had gone dead quiet. All eyes were on Amara. She looked perfectly composed. Because she wasn't done yet. The silence in the bank lobby stretched for what felt like forever. Amara stood motionless, briefcase steady on the marble counter. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't waver. She simply waited. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, she said something that cracked the polished confidence of Assistant Manager Bradley Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, she began, cool and controlled. You might want to check your employee handbook. Bradley raised an eyebrow. Excuse me, page 47, section 3. Amara continued. Customer service standards. A flicker of confusion passed over Bradley's face. What about it? It's the part about treating all customers with dignity and respect, she said. You remember that part, don't you? Bradley straightened, defensive. I am treating you with respect. Amara didn't argue. She just tilted her head and asked, Are you? That question didn't need volume. It landed with weight, and it hung in the air like a test. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others stared openly now, completely invested in this slow-building confrontation. The minutes ticked by. At 3:05 p.m., Bradley made his next mistake. Security, he called out louder now. Please escort this individual to the exit. The guards hesitated. Marcus Thompson, the head of security, stepped forward. He was a seasoned professional, 23 years in the industry, 15 of them at Heritage. And something about the situation didn't sit right with him. His gut told him this wasn't a typical escalation, but protocol was protocol. He took a few cautious steps forward. Sarah's Instagram live viewer count had just jumped to 2,847. Comments flooded in. This is insane. Someone please check her credentials. That briefcase says board member. Look at the briefcase. Mrs. Roosevelt rose from her chair. She was 78, and she'd been with the bank longer than half the staff. Her husband had helped found Heritage. She didn't raise her voice often, but when she did, it had weight. Excuse me, she called out, directing her voice across the room. This is not how we treat customers. Patricia Kane turned on her heel. Ma'am, please don't interfere. This is a security matter. Security matter, Mrs. Roosevelt snapped. That young woman has done nothing but ask for service. But Bradley was already too deep. He couldn't walk it back. He was too focused on what he believed was right, on showing that he was in charge. Mrs. Roosevelt, I appreciate your concern, he said, trying to stay calm. But we have procedures for a reason. Then turning back to Amara, he added, Ma'am, I'm going to count to 10. If you don't provide the documentation, security will remove you. Amara didn't flinch. She reached for her briefcase. The leather hinges didn't make a sound, but every pair of eyes in the lobby tracked the motion. With practiced ease, she opened it. Inside, everything was organized folders. A tablet, sleek cards in snug compartments. She withdrew a single business card and placed it on the marble. Bradley barely looked at it. Anyone can have a business card printed, but this one read, Dr. Amara Washington, Chief Executive Officer, Heritage Community Bank. Patricia leaned in to see it. Her face turned ghost white. That's impossible, she muttered. Is it? Amara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The time was 3:12 p.m. Sarah's stream hit 591 viewers. Someone had dropped a bomb in the comments. OMG, Google her. She's the actual CEO. Suddenly, people weren't just watching, they were researching. Marcus Thompson's radio crackled. Security, please report to the front desk. Priority 1. It was Ellen Rodriguez, Chief of Staff, calling from the 47th floor. Marcus keyed his radio. Thompson here. Situation in main lobby. Dr. Washington present. Ellen's reply came through calm and sharp. Stand down immediately. All personnel stand down. Marcus froze. He looked at Amara for the first time, not just saw her, but truly looked. The way she carried herself, the briefcase, the platinum Amex, the VIP garage pass, the calm control. Everything made sense. She wasn't just any customer. She was the highest-ranking person in the entire bank. But Bradley didn't hear the radio. He was too deep in his countdown. 7, 6, 5. Robert Hayes still filled the screen on the video monitor. Proceed with removal, if necessary, he instructed. We can't appear weak. Mrs. Roosevelt stepped forward, voice firm. Young man, you're making a terrible mistake. 4, 3. Amara pulled out her tablet. The screen lit up with the Heritage Bank executive portal. Her name, her credentials, everything displayed clearly. A. Washington, CEO. Performance dashboards. Board meeting agendas. Compliance reports. Mr. Mitchell, she said, gesturing to the screen. I suggest you look at this. Silence. Pure silence. Even the background hum of the building felt quieter. Bradley stared at the screen. His face shifted through a series of emotions, confusion, denial, realization, then pure horror. Sarah's viewer count crossed 4,100. She's the CEO, they're done. Screen recording this right now. At 3:18 p.m., the front doors opened. 3 people walked in. Dark suits, quiet confidence. Legal. Ellen Rodriguez led the way. Behind her, Maria Santos, General Counsel, and James Wright, Director of Compliance. The cavalry had arrived. Marcus stepped back instinctively. Ellen nodded at him silently, saying, "This is above your pay grade." She turned toward Amara. "Dr. Washington," she said, her voice echoing. "Apologies for the delay. The board meeting has been moved. Executive conference room is ready." Bradley opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Patricia Kane looked like she'd seen a ghost. She had seen one. Her career's ghost. "There's been a misunderstanding," she whispered. "Has there?" Ellen asked, sharp as glass. Mrs. Roosevelt approached Amara. "My dear, I'm so sorry. This is not the Heritage Bank I've known for 40 years. Thank you, Mrs. Roosevelt." Amara replied, warm. "Your words mean more than you know." The older woman turned to Bradley. Her eyes were kind, but disappointed. "You had the chance to serve someone remarkable today," she said. "Instead, you chose to judge her. That's not just poor customer service. That's poor character." Sarah's stream ticked past 200 viewers. Local media had started tracking the story. Robert Hayes, still on the screen, had gone pale. He tried damage control. "Dr. Washington, there seems to have been a communication breakdown." Amara looked at him, directly into the camera. "We'll be discussing that very soon." She tapped on her tablet. Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. Emergency session. Full attendance required. James Wright was already documenting. Timestamps, witness names, regulatory implications, Fair Housing Act, Equal Credit Opportunity Act, Community Reinvestment. The FDIC would want a word. "Mr. Mitchell," Amara said, "you mentioned protocols." Bradley swallowed hard. "Let's discuss them." All of them. Bradley Mitchell didn't know it yet, but his career was down to its final 37 minutes. Amara Washington reached into her briefcase again. This time, she wasn't pulling out just a business card or her tablet. She opened it all the way, revealing the contents to everyone who cared to look: organized folders, a sleek lanyard, and one very visible badge. It gleamed under the light of the chandeliers like a spotlight on truth. She clipped it to her suit jacket. The words on it left no room for debate. Dr. Amara Washington, Chief Executive Officer, Heritage Community Bank. Gasps rippled through the lobby. The name on the badge matched the name on the wall behind the counter. There it was, etched in brass, celebrating 75 years of Heritage Community Bank. Sarah's Instagram Live hit 6,892 viewers. No way. They just discriminated against their own CEO. This is going viral. Bradley didn't say a word. His mouth opened slightly, his eyes locked on the badge. For a moment, it seemed like his brain was stuck in a loop, trying to process what his eyes were seeing. This can't be real," he mumbled. "Is it really that hard to believe?" Amara asked softly. Her voice didn't need to rise. It carried all the weight of authority, of years, of accomplishment, of someone used to not being seen but never accepting that as her reality. Ellen Rodriguez, Chief of Staff, stepped in again. "Dr. Washington," she said, her tone composed. "The executive team is assembling. Legal has already begun, reviewing the footage from the past 30 minutes. Bradley blinked. "Footage." James Wright, Director of Compliance, answered without looking up from his tablet. "All Heritage branches are under continuous surveillance. Full HD video. Full audio. Everything has been recorded." Patricia Kane looked like she'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Maria Santos, General Counsel, nodded. "We also have real-time social media documentation, screenshots, live streams, dozens of witnesses. And let's not forget, discrimination captured on video is rarely dismissed in court." She turned to face Bradley and Patricia directly. "The Fair Housing Act of 1968, as amended specifically, prohibits this kind of treatment in financial institutions. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act extends those protections further. Mrs. Roosevelt stood silently nearby, watching history unfold with a weary kind of pride. In 40 years of banking here, she said, I've never seen anything like this. Marcus Thompson stepped closer to Amara. The seasoned head of security, still recovering from the shock, offered an apology. Dr. Washington, I want to personally say, if I had recognized you immediately. Amara raised a hand gently. Mr. Thompson, you were following instructions. You did your job. But this isn't about recognizing me. This is about how we treat every customer. Robert Hayes's voice cracked through the monitor again. Dr. Washington, perhaps we could handle this internally. Amara's eyes narrowed just slightly. Mr. Hayes, we'll be discussing your role in this situation shortly. I suggest you review the footage, especially the part where you instructed staff to remove me. Silence from the regional office. Hayes looked like a man already writing his resignation in his head. Bradley finally found his voice. It was shaky small. I had no idea, ma'am. I was just following. No. Amara cut in. Her tone was firm. You weren't following protocols. You were following assumptions. Her words sliced clean through the room. She turned toward Patricia. Tell me, Ms. Kane, what specific policy requires you to question a customer's legitimate business need based solely on their appearance? Patricia hesitated. We were trying to protect the bank's interests. Amara kept going. How many white customers have you required to prove their income was legitimate before using basic banking services? Patricia didn't answer. She didn't have to. James Wright chimed in, eyes still on his tablet. Customer complaints citing discriminatory treatment are up 47% compared to the same 6-month period last year. We currently have 3 pending lawsuits alleging racial discrimination in lending practices. That landed hard. The kind of number that makes board members squirm. Amara's fingers tapped quickly on her tablet. Our Community Reinvestment Act rating is under review, she added. The FDIC has flagged multiple areas for concern in equitable service delivery. I'm sure this will add to their list. Sarah's live stream crossed 8,000 viewers. Someone had tweeted the footage. The post had already been reshared by 3 major news accounts and was starting to trend nationally. Ellen Rodriguez's phone buzzed. Dr. Washington, she said quietly. Channel 7 is requesting a statement. The Chicago Tribune wants an interview. Social media is on fire. Amara took a deep breath, then made a decision. Contact all board members, she said. Move the emergency session to 4:00 p.m. Full attendance required. Maria Santos leaned in. Do you want crisis management looped in? Yes, Amara said. We'll need them. Then she turned back to Bradley. Mr. Mitchell, she said, please join us upstairs. You wanted to discuss protocols. We'll be discussing all of them. His legs wobbled slightly. The board meeting, he asked, dazed. Yes, Mr. Mitchell. The one you claimed didn't exist. Ellen gestured toward the elevators. Let's go. Mrs. Roosevelt approached Amara one more time. My dear, she said, reaching for her hand. Your parents raised you right. I've never been prouder to be a Heritage customer. Amara smiled. Thank you, Mrs. Roosevelt. That means more than you know. The older woman turned to Bradley, her tone full of disappointment. You could have served someone great today, she said. Instead, you chose to judge her. That's not just bad service. That's a failure of character. At 3:37 p.m., Sarah ended her live stream. The final viewer count, 9,847. Her footage had already been screen recorded, shared, reshared, and was being clipped into reels and news segments across every major social platform. As the lobby cleared, Amara stood alone for a moment. She looked around the same space where she'd been denied service, questioned, humiliated. And now she was walking to the boardroom. But this wasn't about vindication. This was about transformation. It was 3:42 p.m. when Dr. Amara Washington stepped into the executive elevator at Heritage Bank Tower. The button for the 47th floor lit up with a soft chime, and as the doors closed, the silence inside said more than words ever could. Bradley Mitchell and Patricia Kane stood beside her, both looking like they'd just walked into a courtroom instead of a conference room. Marcus Thompson, head of security, rode up with them. He didn't say much, just stood quietly behind them, his expression unreadable. That elevator ride was the longest 3 minutes of Bradley's professional life. When the doors opened, the executive floor was already buzzing. Phones rang, advisors whispered, staff moved with urgent purpose. Heritage Bank's top leadership had been summoned without warning, and they all knew this wasn't going to be a routine meeting. By 3:55 p.m., the boardroom filled with 12 people who represented the most powerful names in Chicago banking. At the head of the table sat board chairman David Sterling. A tall, silver-haired man in his late 60s, David had spent 32 years on the board. In all that time, he had never been forced to call an emergency session like this. When Amara entered the room, a hush fell over everyone. Behind her, Bradley and Patricia looked like kids who'd been caught sneaking out after curfew, except their mistakes had just gone viral across social media and news outlets. There were no second chances in this room, just accountability. David Sterling stood and nodded at Amara. "Dr. Washington, we're ready." She didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, connected her tablet to the main display screen, and activated the presentation. The first slide came up: social media analytics. Instagram, live peak 9, 847 viewers. Twitter mentions 47,000 and climbing. Facebook shares 12,000 plus. YouTube screen recorded uploads, 23 channels and growing. The numbers spoke for themselves. What started as a customer service issue, Amara said evenly, has now become a full-blown public relations disaster. Board member Catherine Liu, head of the Risk Management Committee, leaned forward. "What exactly happened?" Amara clicked to the next slide, time-stamped lobby footage. The room watched in total silence as the security footage played. No voiceover. No explanation needed. Just raw footage, Amara being dismissed, questions spoken down to. Bradley's raised voice. Patricia's approval. Sarah's live stream viewers climbing. The moment the business card hit the counter. The stunned silence. The recognition. The fallout. When the footage ended, no one spoke for 30 long seconds. Finally, board member Robert Chen muttered, "Jesus Christ." Maria Santos. General counsel stood. Let's be clear. What we just witnessed isn't just unprofessional. It's illegal. She brought up a breakdown of the legal implications. Federal violations. Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in banking services. Equal Credit Opportunity Act ensures equal treatment in credit and banking. Community Reinvestment Act mandates equitable service delivery. Potential penalties. FDIC fines. $50,000, $500,000 per violation. Civil lawsuits. Unlimited damages. Regulatory sanctions. Operational restrictions. Potential license suspension. She looked directly at Bradley and Patricia. We're already facing 3 discrimination lawsuits. This incident could bring a class action suit worth over $15 million. Bradley swallowed hard. Patricia stared at the table. Jennifer Walsh, chair of the audit committee, turned to Bradley. "Mr. Mitchell, explain your actions." Bradley stood visibly trembling. "I thought I was following protocol. We're trained to flag suspicious activity." Jennifer didn't let up. "What made Dr. Washington's presence suspicious?" Bradley stammered. She didn't look like what Walsh asked." The room froze. Bradley couldn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Patricia tried to jump in. "We see a lot of fraud. It's common for people to claim they need executive access." Maria Santos cut her off. Ms. Kane, in your 12 years at Heritage, how many of those fraud cases involved someone claiming to be a CEO? None, Patricia said quietly. How many white customers have you questioned about their income before giving them service? Patricia flushed. I don't recall. We do, Maria replied. 0. James Wright, Director of Compliance, stood and shared his findings. Customer Service Analysis. Heritage, Flagship Branch. AVG. Service time for white customers, 4.2 minutes. AVG service time for black customers, 12.7 minutes. Additional documentation requested. White customers, 47% of transactions. Black customers, 81% of transactions. Security called for disruptive behavior. 12 incidents. Security called for suspicious activity. 67. Incidents, 54, involving black customers. This isn't isolated, James said. This is systemic. Board member Thomas Anderson, a former federal prosecutor, leaned back and sighed. This isn't just bad PR. This is culture failure. Chairman Sterling turned to the group. The question is simple. What do we do now? Amara stepped forward again. We have 3 options, she said, tapping to the next slide. Option 1. Minimize. Internal discipline only. Private settlements. Hope the media storm dies down. Maintain current practices with minor adjustments. Short-term stock price might be protected, she said. But long-term, we lose public trust. Regulators are already watching us. They'll see this as confirmation of every complaint they've heard. Option 2. Partial reform. Fire the employees involved. Issue a public apology. Offer some bias training. Make minor policy tweaks. This might satisfy public pressure, Amara said, but it doesn't solve the real problem. And we'll be back here within the year. She paused before revealing the 3rd slide. Option 3. Complete transformation. Terminate involved personnel. Industry-leading bias training. Community investment. Initiative. External compliance monitoring. Executive accountability metrics. It's expensive. It's disruptive, Amara admitted, but it's also the only real path forward. Lisa Martinez, another board member, raised her hand. Cost. CFO Ronald Parks stood. Initial implementation, $2.4 million. Ongoing program, $800,000 annually. Community investment, $500,000 minimum. Compare that, Amara said, to $50 million in potential lawsuits. The next slide showed precedent. Wells Fargo, 175. Bank of America, 335 M. Trustmark, 5 M. We can pay for reform now, Amara said, or lawsuits later. The choice is ours. Just then, Robert Hayes appeared on the conference screen. Chairman Sterling addressed him. Mr. Hayes, explain why you authorized Dr. Washington's removal. Hayes shifted in his seat. I supported our staff. I didn't have all the facts. You had a video feed, Amara said sharply. You watched everything, and you chose to escalate. HR Director Margaret Foster stood up with papers in hand. Recommendation for immediate terminations. Terminations recommended. Bradley Mitchell for discriminatory conduct. Patricia Kane for managerial failure. Robert Hayes for escalating discriminatory treatment. Marcus Thompson, warning only. He hesitated. He asked questions. He deserves training, not punishment. Catherine Liu. The risk chair asked the final question. Dr. Washington, what do you recommend? Amara didn't hesitate. We vote for complete transformation, not just for today, but for the next 75 years of Heritage Bank. 12 board members, 12 votes. Unanimous. Option 3, complete reform. At 5:23 p.m., Bradley Mitchell's career at Heritage officially ended. Patricia Kane and Robert Hayes were dismissed within the hour. The meeting was over. But the real work, that was just beginning. The sun rose over downtown Chicago the next morning, casting warm light across the glass facade of Heritage Community Bank's flagship branch. But inside the building, things looked different, felt different. Dr. Amara Washington stood in the same marble lobby where just 24 hours earlier she had been told she didn't belong. But now she was the one, setting the tone for a new era. It was 8:00 a.m. sharp. Employees were already arriving, but this wasn't business as usual. The air buzzed with urgency. Yes, but also with something else. Anticipation, change, accountability. The first visible difference, a team of compliance officers was now stationed throughout the customer service area. They didn't wear uniforms or badges that screamed authority. Instead, they wore small, discreet pins labeled Customer Advocate. Their job wasn't to intimidate. It was to observe support and ensure that every customer was treated fairly. Margaret Foster, the HR director, addressed the morning staff. Starting today, every Heritage Bank employee, without exception, will complete 40 hours of in-depth bias awareness training. Not as punishment, but as professional development. This is how we grow. The staff was silent. Some looked uncertain, but others nodded. They knew something big had shifted. At midnight, a new system had gone live, the Heritage Equity app. James Wright, Director of Compliance, demonstrated it to gathered journalists later that morning. This app allows customers and employees to report discrimination in real time, anonymously, or by name. The reports go straight to Dr. Washington's office and to the legal team. No delays, no cover-ups. Transparency builds trust. The app featured live tracking of complaints resolution timelines and anonymized case studies of how issues were addressed. And it was working. By 10 a.m., 5 reports had already been submitted and 3 resolved. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen had returned to the bank, but this time she wasn't a casual witness with a latte and an iPhone. This time she was a guest. Media requests had flooded her inbox. Every local outlet wanted to interview her, but Sarah declined most of them. "I didn't make this story," she told Channel 7. Dr. Washington did. What impressed me most wasn't just how she handled the discrimination, but how fast she turned it into something better. Behind the scenes, change was moving fast. The original community investment fund of $500,000, it had tripled overnight. Board members, shaken by what they saw, began personally contributing. By mid-morning, the fund stood at $1.2 million, earmarked for minority-owned small businesses and financial literacy programs on Chicago's south and west sides. And Mrs. Roosevelt, she was back too, sitting comfortably in the executive customer area sipping coffee. She and Amara spoke privately for 20 minutes. "My dear," she said, "I've watched a lot of change in my time, but I've never seen transformation happen like this. You've honored your name and your position." Amara smiled. "Thank you, Mrs. Roosevelt. That means the world." In a back conference room, James Wright presented updated data. Key metrics: 24 hours after incident, AVG service time, all demographics, 5.1 minutes, requests for additional documentation, down 73%, customer satisfaction scores, up 89%, previous week. Internal employee confidence rating, up 45% following emergency training. And the changes weren't just cosmetic. Heritage Bank adopted a new internal standard, Heritage Equity metrics that went beyond federal requirements. New policies included quarterly bias audits by third-party firms, monthly tracking of service time by race and income level, executive bonuses tied directly to diversity and inclusion progress, mandatory community advisory board with rotating local members. Even Marcus Thompson, the head of security, had overhauled his team's protocol. No more one-size-fits-all responses, he said to his staff. De-escalation, awareness, respect. That's our new standard. His revised training manual now included cultural sensitivity modules, role-play simulations, and real-world case studies, starting with the footage from the previous day. The transformation was spreading fast. 3 pending discrimination lawsuits settled. All 3 plaintiffs praised the bank's transparency and commitment. One even joined the advisory board. And the media. The story had reached national coverage by lunchtime. Cable news clips, think pieces, TikToks. A 2-minute recap video of Sarah's stream had over 4 million views by noon. Then something unexpected happened. Harvard Business School called. They wanted to develop a case study on how Heritage Bank had handled the crisis and turned it into a model of rapid institutional reform. Amara agreed. Let the world learn from it, she said, especially the parts we didn't get right. Later that afternoon, a call came in from Washington, D.C., the Federal Reserve. They wanted Amara to join the Community Advisory Council, a select group of leaders helping shape equitable financial policy across the nation. Amara accepted, not for the title, but for the opportunity to make sure what happened in that lobby didn't happen again anywhere. Back in her office, Amara scrolled through messages. Hundreds of them. Support, encouragement, some angry, some inspired. Then her assistant buzzed in. It's Mr. Mitchell, she said. He's downstairs. Send him up, Amara replied. Bradley Mitchell stepped off the elevator like a man walking into a courtroom. His tie was still on, but his confidence had long since disappeared. He clutched a folder in both hands like it was a shield. When he entered Dr. Amara Washington's office, he stopped at the threshold. The space was large but minimal. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city. The desk was sleek modern. On the wall behind her hung a single-framed quote in gold lettering. Power is not in what you control. It's in what you inspire. Amara stood as he entered, nodding calmly. Mr. Mitchell, she said, gesturing toward a chair. He sat, awkwardly. I wanted to thank you for not firing me on the spot, he said, voice quiet. You were fired, Amara replied simply. But that doesn't mean you can't still grow. Bradley blinked, unsure how to respond. Amara slid a folder across the table. This is a 6-month program. Intensive diversity training, community service, counseling, education, fully funded by Heritage Bank. If you complete it successfully, you'll receive job placement support with one of our partner organizations. Bradley stared at the folder. Is this some kind of PR stunt? No, Amara said. It's not about optics. It's about responsibility. He looked up. Why offer me anything after what I did? Amara paused for a long moment. Because intention doesn't erase harm. But growth prevents repeat harm, she said. You were wrong. Deeply wrong. But you have a choice now. Let this define you, or let it transform you. Bradley took the folder. His hands trembled slightly. I want to do better, he said. Then start here, Amara replied. His first assignment, volunteering at Southside financial literacy workshops, helping families learn about banking budgets and credit without judgment or assumptions. Patricia Kane was offered a similar path, a full scholarship to the same program. 6 months. Support, mentorship. She declined. 12 years at Heritage ended with a severance package and a short press statement. Robert Hayes, however, faced harsher consequences. His regional position was eliminated. His public statements during the incident, caught on video broadcast across the internet, became part of mandatory training modules throughout the financial industry. He didn't just lose a job. He became a case study. 2 weeks later, the FDIC wrapped up its investigation. The agency issued a rare public commendation. Heritage Community Bank responded to systemic failure with transparency, accountability, and industry-leading reforms. No fines, no sanctions, no shutdowns. In fact, their CRA rating Community Reinvestment Act was upgraded from needs improvement to satisfactory within 60 days. Heritage's share price had dropped briefly after the news went viral. But by Friday morning, the market responded, plus 1.7% gain. Investors weren't running, they were rallying. The world was watching, and Heritage was showing what leadership looked like. Jessica, the young teller who'd first redirected Amara to the basic service line, flourished under the new system. Turns out, her instincts were always compassionate. She just didn't have the right framework. Now, with bias training and coaching, Jessica became one of the bank's top-rated customer service specialists. Within a month, she was promoted to Customer Experience Specialist. Marcus Thompson, meanwhile, took the lessons to heart. He rebuilt the security department from the ground up, training cultural sensitivity escalation protocols. His team became a model for security units across the banking sector. He was featured in Security Management magazine, sharing new standards now being adopted by Fortune 500 companies nationwide. The 3 pending discrimination lawsuits all settled within 6 weeks, not because of hush money, but because the plaintiffs saw real measurable change. Their attorneys publicly praised Heritage's swift and sincere response. At the first monthly community forum, over 200 people showed up. Black business owners, single moms, retired veterans, students, former critics, bank employees. They came to talk, to share, to ask, and most importantly, to listen. Amara stood at the front of the room. This isn't about a press release, she told them. It's about people. It's about what happens when we stop assuming and start understanding. And it was working. 6 months after the incident, the results were stunning. Statistical changes. Customer satisfaction, up 127% across all demographics. New account openings increased 89% underserved communities. Employee retention, up 76% following culture shift. Community investment, deployed $2.8 million in small business loans. Equity audit scores, highest in the region. The flagship branch itself had become a training destination. Banking professionals from around the country flew in to study how Amara's team rebuilt a toxic culture. Twice a week, tours were led by none other than Jessica. She wore her new badge, proudly telling the story with honesty and poise. Right there, she'd say, pointing to the counter is where I made a snap judgment. And right there is where I learned how to do better. The Heritage Equity app had processed over 12,000 reports in its first 6 months with a 97% resolution rate. Other banks licensed the app, spreading the accountability model industry-wide. Even Bradley Mitchell, now halfway through his training program, found his footing. In a video testimonial shared with new trainees, he said, "I thought good intentions were enough. I learned they're not. But I also learned it's never too late to choose humility." Dr. Washington's quiet leadership had turned a scandal into a revolution. But her work wasn't done. Because across the country, maybe even in your city, someone is walking into a lobby right now. And whether they're seen, heard, or respected depends on what we've learned. By the time the national news cycle caught up with what had happened at Heritage Bank, it wasn't just a story about injustice anymore. It had become a blueprint for change. Dr. Amara Washington didn't care much for media attention, but she understood its power. She agreed to one major televised interview on the condition that the focus stayed on the reforms, not the drama. The segment aired during prime time. The anchor opened with a simple but striking line. In an era of corporate apologies, Heritage Bank didn't just say sorry. It rewrote the playbook. Clips rolled footage from the viral live stream interviews with Sarah Chen customer testimonials and behind-the-scenes looks at the training sessions. But what captured viewers most was Amara's calm, firm voice. We didn't transform Heritage Bank because we got caught. We transformed it because that's what leadership demands, especially when no one's looking. Sarah Chen, now a verified social justice journalist with over 847,000 followers, continued documenting stories of injustice and institutional repair. Her new series, This Changes Everything, started with the Heritage case and expanded to schools, hospitals, even police departments. Each episode ended with the same question she always asked Amara. What would you tell someone facing discrimination today? Amara's answer never changed. Document everything. Find your voice. Silence enables injustice. Speaking truth creates change. Mrs. Roosevelt, now 79, had become the unofficial ambassador for Heritage's rebirth. She attended every community forum, often the first to arrive and the last to leave. At one session, she stood and said, "I've seen a lot of history. Wars, civil rights marches, recessions. But watching one woman's courage shift an entire institution, that's history too." And she wasn't wrong. 6 months after the boardroom reckoning, Heritage Bank was named Banking Leader in Diversity and Equity by 3 major financial organizations. But Amara didn't stop there. She launched the Heritage Leadership Academy, a program designed to train the next generation of financial professionals with emphasis on ethical leadership, inclusive practices, and community accountability. Applications poured in from across the country. Back at the flagship branch, transformation was no longer a goal. It was embedded in every process, from hiring to loan approval to daily customer interactions. One afternoon, Amara walked the floor, something she still did regularly, not for appearances, but to stay grounded. She saw a young black man in a hoodie nervously approach the counter, the kind of appearance that used to trigger judgment. But this time, the teller smiled, stood and said, "Welcome to Heritage. How can I help you today?" The man relaxed. It was a small moment. But Amara knew it's those moments that build trust. Quiet, consistent changes that echo louder than any press release ever could. Even Bradley Mitchell, now nearly finished with his diversity training program, had started speaking to corporate groups about what he called the blind spots of privilege. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't excuse it. "I judged someone who looked like me once did not belong," he told one crowd. "Turns out she belonged more than any of us." He still had a long way to go. But he was walking the road, and people were watching. In Washington, Amara's role on the Federal Reserve's Community Advisory Council started to take shape. She advocated for national implementation of customer equity apps, real-time bias tracking, and anonymous accountability reporting. Some banks resisted. Others called her revolutionary. Amara didn't mind either way. She knew change never came easy, and she wasn't here for applause. She was here to make sure what happened in that marble lobby never happened again, anywhere. One Saturday morning, she returned to that very lobby. No press, no cameras, just her. Jessica spotted her first and walked over. "Good morning, Dr. Washington." "Good morning, Jessica. How's the new role?" Jessica smiled. "I had a customer yesterday. A little girl came in with her dad. She said she wanted to work here when she grows up. That's never happened before." Amara smiled back. "Then we're doing something right." That same day, the Equity Impact Report for the last quarter was released. Black and Hispanic loan approval rates up 34%. Minority-owned business loans up 52%. Staff diversity up 41%. Bias-based complaint resolution 98% closed with documented improvement. Community investment total $3.6 million, but perhaps the most impressive stat, 0 public complaints of discrimination in the last 90 days. Not because people weren't watching, but because the people inside the building had changed. The next board meeting was held in the same room where the emergency session had taken place. This time, the tone was different. There was no panic, just purpose. Chairman David Sterling opened with a simple line. What happened last spring embarrassed us. What's happened since has made us proud. As Amara presented the bank's quarterly performance, she closed with one final chart. It wasn't financial, it wasn't legal. It was a heat map of social sentiment. The title read, From Crisis to Credibility. Heritage had gone from being dragged online to being a model for others, and they weren't done yet. By the time winter arrived, the Heritage Bank story wasn't just a headline anymore. It was a case study, a podcast topic, a bullet point in HR seminars, a reference in leadership keynotes across the nation. And quietly, without much fanfare, it became something else, a movement. Other banks started following suit, first locally, then nationally. 5 major institutions adopted real-time equity tracking tools. 10 more added community investment benchmarks to their performance goals. 24 rolled out bias awareness training modeled on Heritage's system. All of them credited one catalyst, Dr. Amara Washington. And she didn't slow down. She traveled to New York to speak at the National Association of Minority Bankers, to Atlanta for a roundtable on ethical lending, to Los Angeles to advise on new federal guidelines for inclusive banking practices. But back home in Chicago, her mission never drifted. Once a month, like clockwork, she returned to the South Side Financial Literacy Workshop. Not to speak, to listen. Bradley Mitchell was there now, volunteering quietly, respectfully. One afternoon, a teenage girl asked him, "Why are you here?" He paused, then answered honestly, "Because I made a mistake, and I want to be part of something better." She nodded, then smiled. Cool. It was a small exchange, but it meant everything to him. At Heritage, changes kept deepening. The Heritage Leadership Academy opened its doors with its first full-class students from underrepresented communities, all on full scholarship. They were taught by industry leaders, business professors, and real customers who had experienced banking bias firsthand. Each student received a mentor. Each mentor had gone through their own transformation. Jessica, now promoted again to Director of Customer Experience, helped design the Academy's Customer Empathy module. She taught her class, the most powerful words in customer service are, "I believe you. Start there." Sarah Chen turned her original live stream into a short documentary titled Her Name Was on the Building. It premiered at a Chicago Film Festival and won 2 awards. In one scene, she narrated, "The woman they tried to escort out was the same woman who held the keys to the boardroom." The real story isn't that they didn't know who she was, it's that they didn't care to find out. Until it was too late. Her Instagram grew beyond news. It became a platform for documenting moments of change when organizations didn't just apologize, but evolved. She frequently returned to Heritage for follow-ups, each time greeted like family. Mrs. Roosevelt continued attending forums. She wore her late husband's old Heritage pin proudly on her blazer. She'd become something of a legend herself. Her fiery speech in the bank lobby replayed in training videos across dozens of institutions. One evening, she told Amara privately, "I hope he's proud up there." "I think he would be." Amara smiled softly. "I know he is." And then there was Marcus Thompson, the security chief who had once hesitated. Now he spoke at national security conferences about cultural bias and situational awareness. His presentation, seeing the full picture, emphasized empathy over assumption. He ended each talk the same way. The greatest threat to security isn't chaos. It's blindness. See people, and you'll see the truth. As the anniversary of the incident approached, Heritage hosted a community open house. Hundreds attended. Children colored pictures of bank tellers and community heroes. Food trucks lined the street. Live jazz played in the lobby. The same marble floors that once echoed with tension now hummed with joy. Amara stood near the entrance, welcoming guests shaking hands, answering questions. A little boy, no older than 5, ran up to her. "Are you the boss?" She knelt to his level, smiled, and said, "I am." His eyes widened. "Cool." Then he ran off. That moment stayed with her, not because of the title, but because that little boy had asked her the question without disbelief. He saw her and assumed possibility, and that's what it had all been for. That night, she sat at her desk alone, the city glowing behind her. She pulled out the same briefcase she had carried into the bank 1 year ago, the same monogrammed leather, the same quiet power. She opened it, reached inside, and removed a folder marked Year 1 Impact Report. She flipped through the pages. The numbers were strong. The culture had shifted, but what struck her most were the quotes at the end, statements submitted anonymously by employees and customers alike. "I never thought I'd feel safe walking into a bank. This is the first time I've been treated like I actually belonged. My faith in the system isn't gone." Not because of what happened, but because of what they did afterward. Amara closed the folder and exhaled. Then she turned off the light, because for her, tomorrow was already waiting. Spring arrived quietly in Chicago, but inside Heritage Bank, it bloomed with purpose. The 1-year anniversary of the incident that had rocked the institution from top to bottom wasn't marked by a press release or a self-congratulatory video. It was marked by something far more meaningful, a quiet morning ceremony held in the same marble lobby where it had all unfolded. There was no stage, no ribbon cutting, no fanfare, just a circle of chairs, a few cameras, and people, employees, customers, community leaders, and students from the Heritage Leadership Academy. Dr. Amara Washington stood in the center, holding the same briefcase that had once nearly gotten her removed from her own bank. The briefcase that had become a symbol. Behind her, the Heritage logo had been replaced with a new one, sleeker, more inclusive in design, and a plaque installed beneath it read, "To serve with equity is not an act of charity. It's an act of justice." She welcomed everyone with a calm voice that carried the weight of experience and the clarity of purpose. "We're not here to celebrate a mistake," Amara said. "We're here to remember the lesson and, more importantly, the work that followed." She spoke briefly about change, how fast it can come when it's honest, and how fragile it can be when it's not nurtured. Then she stepped aside, allowing others to speak. Sarah Chen went next. "It's wild to think my live stream turned into this," she said. "But the truth is, it wasn't me who changed the bank. I just happened to be watching when someone brave enough to demand change stood her ground." Her voice cracked just slightly, "And I'm still watching." Next came Marcus Thompson, whose security team now trained officers across 4 states. "I used to think my job was to protect the building," he said. "But I learned sometimes the thing that needs protection most is the dignity of the people inside it." Then Jessica took the floor. The young teller turned director spoke with practiced grace. "Dr. Washington didn't just change our policies," she said. "She changed us. She taught me that good intentions aren't enough if they live in a broken system." She paused, looking around the lobby. "This place used to intimidate me. Now it inspires me." One of the final speakers was Mrs. Roosevelt, who needed no introduction. She stood with the help of a cane and spoke in a firm voice, softened only by age. "I didn't know how much I needed to see this," she said, "to know that it's possible, real lasting change. My husband helped build this bank, and I can say with confidence that what it is now, he'd be proud." Applause broke gently across the room. After the event, Amara quietly met with new recruits, young people eager to enter finance with a mission, not just a resume. One young woman asked, "What's your secret to getting through moments like that day?" Amara smiled. "No secret, just preparation and knowing who you are." Outside, a mural was being finished on the side of the bank. It showed a silhouette of a black woman standing in front of glass doors, briefcase in hand. But instead of showing her face, The artist left it open, a mirror finish that reflected whoever stood in front of it. At the bottom, it read, "You belong." Across the city, other institutions began hosting their own equity audits. Churches, schools, businesses, even a few police precincts. The heritage model became shorthand for what corporate redemption could look like when done with sincerity. And in Washington, D.C., Amara's role expanded. She was appointed to a federal task force on financial equality, tasked with reshaping national policy on discriminatory lending and customer service practices. Her approach was practical, tough, and solution-driven. "I don't care about sound bites," she told them. "I care about systems." Meanwhile, Heritage Bank's numbers spoke louder than any speech could. Latest metrics. Customer equity ratings, 9.6 per 10 across all branches. Executive diversity, 43% increase in underrepresented backgrounds. Minority business loans, $5.2 million and counting. Discrimination complaints down 93% year over year. Employee satisfaction, highest in company history. Bradley Mitchell, now a program graduate and full-time employee at a nonprofit financial education center, sent Amara a handwritten letter. "You didn't owe me kindness, but you offered it anyway. And because of that, I get to be better, not just in my job, but in my life. Thank you." She kept the letter in her briefcase, not because it erased what happened, but because it reminded her why she'd stayed. It was a cool Friday evening, nearly a year to the day since the confrontation that changed Heritage Community Bank forever. Dr. Amara Washington stood backstage at the American Bankers Association's annual conference in Miami. The ballroom was packed with over 3,000 banking executives, policy advisors, compliance directors, and industry reporters. But Amara wasn't here for recognition. She was here to deliver something far more powerful than a speech and invitation. As the MC introduced her, listing off her accolades, viral moments, and federal appointments, Amara stepped onto the stage dressed in a simple black suit. No flashy accessories, no security entourage, just her. The room rose to its feet, a standing ovation before she even said a word. She waited until the applause settled, then began. "When I walked into a bank lobby a year ago, I wasn't looking for a fight," she said. "I was looking for service. Respect. The same things any customer deserves." She paused, scanning the crowd. And yet that moment revealed something that goes far deeper than one branch or one bad decision. It revealed what happens when we stop seeing people and start seeing assumptions. She spoke without notes, just truth. The real power in our institutions doesn't come from assets or market share. It comes from integrity, from how we respond when our values are tested. She shared how Heritage had rebuilt itself, not just publicly, but structurally. She showed slides of internal equity metrics, community investments, employee transformations, the mural, the app, the reforms, the faces. She showed a quote from Mrs. Roosevelt, "Leadership is who you are when no one is watching." She ended with a call. If you work in banking, your job isn't just managing money, it's managing trust. So I ask you, when the someone who doesn't look like your average client walks through your door, what will you choose to see? The applause was thunderous. That night, her inbox overflowed with messages, some from CEOs ready to start audits, others from employees finally feeling seen, a few from strangers who had only just heard her story and felt compelled to thank her. Back in Chicago, things didn't slow down. The Heritage transformation was now a national case study taught in MBA programs. Banks in Detroit, New Orleans, and even Toronto had begun implementing similar equity platforms. And most importantly, every single Heritage branch now had a community impact board made up of real customers. Their job, to hold the bank accountable. Not just when things went wrong, but when they went too quiet. In the months that followed, yes, The Heritage Equity app processed its 20,000th submission with a 96.4% resolution rate. Over $6 million in minority-owned business loans were issued. Employee turnover dropped to an all-time low. 17 employees who once feared bias now sat in leadership roles. Jessica, the once overlooked teller, became the chief customer officer, the youngest ever in bank history. And then came a letter that made Amara pause. It came from a girl named Aaliyah, age 10, who had toured the flagship branch with her school. Her handwriting was uneven, but her words were sharp. Dear Dr. Washington, I didn't know black women could be the boss of a whole bank. Now I do. I want to be like you when I grow up. Maybe I'll even make a bank of my own. Thank you for showing me. Amara kept that letter framed on her desk because, in the end, that was the legacy. Not the lawsuits avoided, not the media coverage, but the quiet, lasting shift in what people believed was possible. The final community forum of the year was held in the same lobby as the first. Amara stood near the mural. The mirror-finished silhouette of the woman in the doorway shimmered in the lights. A group of new employees stood beside her diverse, passionate ready. One of them asked Dr. Washington, "How will we know if we're succeeding?" She smiled. When the people we used to ignore don't just feel seen, they feel welcomed. As the forum ended and the crowd thinned, Amara lingered behind. She walked past the executive desks, past the briefcase now displayed behind glass, past the photo wall that showed the faces of transformation. She paused one last time beneath the plaque that read, "To serve with equity is not an act of charity. It's an act of justice." She adjusted the lapel of her suit. Then quietly, she left the lobby that once tried to push her out, now a symbol of how far a place can come when someone refuses to be silent. And in that quiet walk to her office, one truth echoed louder than any applause. Real leadership doesn't start in the boardroom. It starts the moment someone says you don't belong here, and you answer, "Yes, I do."